Hello there. What is your idea of a fabulous summer vacation?
Do you like to go to the same place every year, or do you like something different every time?
Are you a mountain person or perhaps a beach person?
Do you like camping, glamping, or do you prefer creature comforts of a hotel?
We are here to tell you there's one place that you should really consider going to.
This place is bigger or more popular than you realize.
And it's got fun, excitement, and it's educational for everyone, regardless of age.
Intrigued? Join us on this episode of Aviation Intrigue, and we'll tell you more.
This is aviation intrigue.
So, Elaine, do you have a favorite summer vacation that you do every time?
Well, I like to go to different destinations every year, and I am a really big fan of the great outdoors. So for me, it's hiking, camping, fishing trips, things like that.
Not a fishing guy, but I will take the hiking and camping. I'm certainly not a beach person.
Neither am I. And being here in the flatlands, you do crave going out to hike in the mountains, or even small hills for me are great for walking anywhere I can get where there's some terrain.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I go to a beach and about 10 minutes later, I'm like, okay, now what? What do I do now?
Now, if the beach is in the mountains, that's a little bit different. But I also like it a little colder. I don't like hot summer. So I'm generally heading north when I go on vacation, especially in the summer.
And how about do you tent camp or do you book hotels, Airbnb perhaps?
Tent camping, and I like to go to places where there aren't any cars allowed. Generally, I like to hike into where I camp, but there are some favorite places where it's okay to drive, take your RV camper in. There's one place where you're going to be in a very, very busy camping area, and that's another favorite. That's a little bit different from where I would normally vacation.
That's interesting because I think we're seeing some similarities. Both of us tend to like this mountain or up in the hillside, camping, hiking, that kind of stuff. But there is an activity that both of us like and a little bit different that it attracts more people and a bit more crowded than your secluded mountain hike.
Yep, this is a little different from what I would normally say is a great camping trip, because I like to do the secluded getaways. I like to go where there aren't any vehicles, except for this one place that I actually return to every year without exception.
Okay, I know you're building up the suspense here. So, if you're a family and you have a 6-year-old and you have a 70 or 80-year-old father-in-law, is this place something that you can take them to?
So you're talking about a family with different generations, where maybe a place that has something for all ages. This place definitely has it, and you do not have to be a rustic type of camper or even an RV camper. If you prefer hotels, that's fine. There's something for everyone at this place. You just have to be sure that you're okay dealing with a lot of people and seeing the crowds.
And how about activities? I personally like to do things. I mean, the reason I don't like beaches is after 10 minutes of lying down, I get bored. I like to do things. I go skiing, hiking, that kind of stuff. So, how about if you have a family and one person wants to read a book or learn new things and the other person wants to do a lot of hands-on stuff? Is that conducive to that?
Well, what's cool about this place and this event is that you can do a little bit of everything. If you need to go sit down under a tree in the shade, take a break, have a little picnic, read a book, and let's say the 6-year-old and one of the parents wants to go off and do a little sightseeing and come back in an hour, it's a great way to take a group but yet have a little bit of something for everyone.
Okay, since we are an aviation intrigue show, I assume this has something to do with airplanes, right?
Just a little bit, maybe that's a hint.
So, where is this place? What is it?
And by the way, I'll also point out that this place is centrally located. Hopefully, some of you can put this on your summer trip list. It is called AirVenture, and it takes place for 1 week every July in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. If you have not heard about this, stick around. We're going to tell you a lot more. This is like the world's biggest campground, and just about any mode of camping and then some will apply here.
Okay, so you could camp in it if you want, but you said you could also stay in a hotel if you want.
You can stay in a hotel, and there are some towns in this area where you can book a hotel. And this event is so big that people rent out their houses as well. So, whatever your accommodations needs are, they're going to be there. Obviously, camping is the biggest because it's meant to be all outdoors, but you can get just about anything you need.
Okay, so tell me, for this family with a 6-year-old or a kid in elementary school, what do they get to do?
The event has become so amazingly kid friendly over the years that it has, I think, hit new heights in the past few years. So if you have kids of any age, all the way up through high school, college, because by the way, there are colleges and job fairs at this event as well. So if you have somebody graduating high school or going into college environment where they are looking for what they may be interested in doing. There's that all the way down to very, very little kids. In fact, one of the little destinations within this destination is called KidVenture. How cool is that? Something for every age.
What about I'm a hands-on person. I like to get my hands dirty, learn new skills. Is there things there?
Definitely something for everyone. Let's say you are a craftsman, you enjoy woodworking, or let's say you happen to know how to weld. Let's say you're in the construction business. Let's say you are just a mechanical type of person and you like to build things, you like to tinker with things. This place has something for you as well.
Okay, if I am a little on the older side, I am here to observe, and maybe I want to look at things that are, let's call it vintage stuff.
This is something, again, for all generations. If you are someone who appreciates history, if you are someone, let's say, a veteran of some of the wars throughout history who wants to go and have something to remember, to honor, to meet new people who have experienced the things you experienced and learn a little bit more about history, there's a place for you there too.
Okay, we already said this has something to do with the airplanes. So how do the airplanes play into this?
So the airplanes play into this because there are airplanes of all different types, aircraft, anything that flies is gathered in this one spot. And we'll talk about the sheer numbers of this later on in the show because it is amazing what you can see here, from things you can hold in your hand that fly to the most gigantic military carriers, some of the largest aircraft in the world, and then some, and everything in between are here. And by the way, did I mention there's something for everyone?
I think you mentioned it a couple of times. So it looks like there's airplanes. Looks like there are newer airplanes. There's small airplanes. There's old airplanes. I'm going to say World War airplanes. And there's something for a small kid. There's something for older people, something for everything in between. Hands-on stuff, watching stuff, touching stuff, and also vendors and fairs, and I'm sure there's eating stuff too.
Lots and lots of food all throughout. Think about the biggest campground you've ever been in, or the biggest outdoor fair you've ever been to. This is many, many times bigger. And by the way, if you are still not interested in aircraft or things that fly, that's okay. We're not going to judge. You can still go sit under a tree in a quiet spot, read a book, and enjoy the beautiful weather. There is definitely something for everyone here.
And I'm going to guess that we get a chance to meet different kind of people who can tell you more about what they do, what their passion is, and that itself becomes educational and inspiring.
Definitely. Anything you are curious about in the universe of aviation is here. The thing is finding those things out. So we're going to share some tips on how to get most out of your visit.
And what is it called again?
It is called AirVenture, and it is a week-long annual show every late July in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Okay, I hope we piqued curiosity of some of you. And if you want to know more, stick around, because when we come back, we're going to tell you how big this is, how exciting this is. And then later on in the segment, we'll tell you how Elaine and I go to this every year. And every year we are like kids in a candy store. So stick with us. You know, I wonder, I'm curious to see the campsites that I go to typically have, I don't know, 50, 100 sites. I'm really wondering if people they like to go to big campsites with a lot more. Hey, do you?
I definitely think that if you're a family with kids, that's going to be a lot more fun to go to a big campsite because there'll be playgrounds and other things to do, and not just one thing to see, but a lot of things to see and a lot of neat people you can meet. So I would say people with families would prefer that.
How many campsites do you think, or do people think are in this AirVenture that we talked about?
I don't know. I think if I didn't say that I've been there, I would guess maybe a couple of thousand, because the biggest campground I know is in South Carolina, and I think they have over 1,000 campsites.
Interesting. I have notes right here. I am going to look it up so I don't misquote it. So, evidently, for this AirVenture, there are more than 15,000 campsites. 15,000 campsites. That's a little bigger than the usual KOA and state campsites that we go to.
Yeah, a couple hundred would seem big to some people, but we're talking more than several thousand, and that is one big campground. Now, I'm assuming that there's some order to this. This isn't just 15,000 RVs packed together, right? There's a little bit more to it.
No, it's incredibly well organized. There's RV parks with street names and everything
Wow.
else. It is pretty spectacular. And this is where it is completely different than a regular campground, that people come in, fly in the airplanes, and they can camp right next to their airplane. And it is great. Your airplane, just like you park your RV or your car and a campsite, in this case, it's an airplane and a campsite.
And if you had a little camper that you tow behind your car, or you had a tent or a tent with the car, is that allowable there?
I've seen every single variety, from like motor coaches to tent camps to backpackers to sleeping under the wing of the airplane, except when it gets rainy and stormy, then you have to deal with the slush and the mud. But otherwise, I've seen just about every variety, haven't you?
Definitely. And we'll talk more about the airplane camping, because when we had our episode, Road Trips in the Sky, we discussed the concept of using your airplane as a camper. So this definitely sounds like the place where you can see this.
Let's talk about airplanes. Again, let's ask, how many airplanes do we think people consider too many? How many airplanes would they estimate to show up for this week-long festival?
I think it'd be really hard to guess, unless you were on the highway watching these airplanes come in one after the other. I mean, I would think that people would guess maybe a couple hundred a day would be pretty busy, because we're talking Oshkosh. This is like a little town, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, we did a show on airports also, and we did another show on plane spotting, and we talked about watching airplanes. So we are used to watching, a few airplanes taking off here and there. So we talked about Atlanta being the busiest airport. Get this, in this AirVenture week, there are over 10,000 airplanes that come in, either camp or leave or participate in these activities in that one given week.
That is a lot of airplanes. I think that definitely goes up against some of the busiest airports. Is that right?
Not only that, for that week, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, a small town in east central Wisconsin, becomes the busiest control tower airport in the world.
That is really cool. That is amazing. So 10,000 airplanes, but there's a lot more numbers coming and going then. There's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's air show airplanes, there's people arriving, there's campers, there's warplanes, like World War II airplanes, there's modern airplanes, there's military airplanes. It is just amazing. Now, typically, when you go to an airport or fly into an airport, they clear one airplane to land at a time, right? So you're clear to land, and then you land, and then when you are off the runway, then they clear the next airplane to land. Oshkosh during the AirVenture week becomes very different. Tell us a little bit how it's different.
Yes, all over the place. When you have airplanes, whether you have a control tower or not, it's the rule that you have one airplane on the runway at a time. That's the universal rule. no exception, unless you have a huge arrival departure operation like at Oshkosh. So with thousands and thousands of airplanes, thousands and thousands of takeoffs and landings, they have the ability to land multiple airplanes on their huge long runway together. And you can see this year round. The runways and their taxiways, they have these long stretches that go north and south on the biggest part of the airport that have painted dots and shapes on them. And that is where you're supposed to land when you're cleared. And meanwhile, there's an airplane already on the runway ahead of you that's landing on a painted shape on the other side of the runway. And so multiple airplanes are using the runways at once. And by the way, they're using taxiways as a runway. So you've got a few airplanes all coming in at once, and then there's many, many more behind them lined up to land. And that's how it goes for the whole week. And by the way, the day before the show officially starts, usually Sunday before this show starts, before AirVenture starts on Monday, is the peak busiest day when the weather is good.
It sounds like a zoo, and that's the
It
impression
is.
they're probably giving to people. But the organization is just phenomenal. It's very, very difficult to coordinate all these things, orchestrate all these things, and they do this year by year, every year, and they manage these 10,000 odd airplanes coming in with very preset procedures, right? I mean, the procedures that they use in this week are completely different and very tailored to that particular week.
Very tailored, and they've gotten incredibly good at it over the years because the numbers just keep going up. The people going, the number of aircraft going. And so they tweak these procedures every year, but it's basically in the form of a booklet. And if you plan to fly an aircraft there, there's a procedure in there that is meant for your type of aircraft and where you're going to be parking the aircraft. And so you find the route that is supposed to work for you, and you figure out, okay, I'm going to fly on this day. This is the route I need to fly. And it's amazing how they're able to coordinate this with this one control tower, not talking to every single airplane on the radio because there's no way that would work, and landing multiple aircraft on the runways and taxiways at the same time. But it's all spelled out. It's amazingly organized the way they do it.
Yeah, mind blowing, isn't it? It's just so 10,000 odd airplanes, 15,000 odd campsites. How many people show up here in this week?
They have been breaking their own records in recent years from what I read. I believe last year, and it's always in late July. This year it starts July 1st. Last year it was about the same date, and their total attendance record was about 686,000 people. They broke their previous record. It looks like 2023, 677,000 approximately. And I can't think of any place in the world where 600,000 people have visited in a few days' time. It's just mind-boggling.
Wow, almost 700,000 people in 1 week, 10,000 odd airplanes, 15,000 odd campground. You know, we'll talk about this in the next segment. You and I go there pretty much every year. And every year we want to go because it is changing. It is just evolving. It's a fabulous place. It's a perfect place for families to go to. In the next segment, we're going to tell you more about what we do and what you can do to take advantage of it.
Well, I hope we got people curious about the world's biggest campground and one of the world's biggest summertime parties and a family-friendly destination. So is there more you could tell us about AirVenture, which, by the way, is known locally as an air show, but as you can see, it is much, much more than that. And I hope people can tell us if they're interested in checking it out.
Yeah, I really hope that people will go in the comments and let us know, especially if they're interested, we pique their curiosity enough to come in next year or in the next few years. First, to start with, this is organized. We call it the AirVenture. It is organized by a familiar organization that we have mentioned several times. It's called the EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association, which is headquartered in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is not that far from either one of us.
It's a real local gem because when you can drive to Oshkosh to check out one day of the show or a couple of days, that is great. It's really well known locally. It draws amazing crowds for air shows that they have kept adding and adding to every year, and the general public will drive, can't come in for miles, but it's definitely greatly popular with the local crowds around eastern Wisconsin.
Yeah, on a non-AirVenture week, basically the rest of the year, it is a relatively small, maybe medium-sized airport that every one of us can fly to. In fact, Elaine, a little trivia that my first ever solo cross-country flight that I had to do as a student pilot, this was way back in late 90s. My first landing outside of my home airport was at Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Wow.
It was like a goosebumps moment. Of course, that was not the AirVenture week, so it was low key.
Okay.
And it's to me it's a very stark contrast. That week it's a zoo with 700,000 odd people, and every other week it's a normal airport. It's a very historic and very popular airport otherwise during the EAA, but otherwise it's just a regular airport.
It is. It has the same control tower that has the world's busiest sign on it during that week. Outside of that, it is a regular towered, medium-sized airport that has a little bit of everything. People personally flying. They do have flight training going on there. They do have charter operations going in and out, and other aviation services, and a couple of aviation related and aircraft related businesses based there. So it can be fairly busy in the day to day, but otherwise it is just a normal airport.
And the museum there is fantastic too.
And by the way, EAA does have its own very large aviation museum, and that's a year round local favorite.
Yeah. Now, how we talked about air show. So it's a big air show. Obviously, it attracts a lot of camping aircraft, but also air show aircraft. But what can we tell our viewers about how does this compare to other big shows? I think people are thinking the Paris Air Show, the Farnborough Air Show, the Zhuhai, the Dubai. There's several that are big, but this one is a little different and a little special.
This one, I think matches up to some of the world's famous air shows, because if I look at the list here, you mentioned the Paris Air Show, the Dubai Air Show. There are air shows all over the world throughout the year that don't quite have the type of operation that allows us 10,000 airspace. 10,000 airplanes and 600,000 plus visitors and tens of thousands of campers. They're just not set up like that. They have wonderful air shows, which, by the way, is a worldwide growing spectator sport, spectator industry, and that is always the popular anchor to any of these shows. But at Oshkosh, at AirVenture, it is many, many times bigger, because they have, I believe, at least 9 air shows during the week, because they include 2 night air shows, several hours worth of air shows and air performances every day. And I believe that is really on a much larger scale than anything else.
I think the first AirVenture week that I attended was in the late 90s, or maybe early 2000s. I'm not sure in that time frame. I remember going there with family, kind of camping out. You can just take your lawn chairs and blankets and go to the flight line. It's very accessible. And I remember, I think I mentioned this in an earlier episode, we actually saw an SR-71 Blackbird do a flyby. We have
Wow.
seen the Harrier jets do a vertical landing, bombers. We got big military jets, small military, fast military jets, aerobatic airplanes, parachute jumpers, even glider flights, everything in there. There's something for everybody. The air show is a big attraction, but that's not the only thing.
Definitely. Yeah, I think their air shows are second to none, because they have a little bit of everything from the history, the military commemorative flyby demonstrations. They will have everything from that to aerobatics, competitive aerobatics, precision flying, as well as anything in between. Because when they have an aircraft that appears at Oshkosh, it can be anything and everything, the latest and greatest. And not only are these on display in this huge display area that's all outdoors, and there's just thousands of people walking around, you can go to part of the air show You could go to the entire air show. You mentioned taking the long chairs and sitting down on the flight line for the air show. That is one of the best people watching experiences ever, because you look around and it's just so vast. But if you're not interested in having that many hours of the air show, you can still walk around and find a quiet spot in any of the shopping areas and any of the walkways.
So I'm sure some people who are listening are curious. Elaine, so how do you spend your time when you go to AirVenture? What do you particularly do?
Well, people in aviation tend to make this a go-to when they can travel, and it's fabulous because for me, every year at AirVenture is a different experience, and that's what makes it so cool. There has never been the same AirVenture experience for me twice, and that is what is so amazing and huge about it. You can spend as much time as you want at all the daily air shows. You can walk around all day long and look at, I don't know how many thousands of airplanes. One thing people don't realize, for people who drive in for the day or who are camping in the vehicle camping area, is that you can actually walk into the rows of where aircraft campers are staying. There's acres and acres and acres of grass where these thousands of aircraft we described are camping there for the week. And you can actually walk in and out among the rows. You can talk to people. There are people sitting in their lawn chairs in the shade of their airplane wing. You can go up to them and ask them about their airplanes, and that is an amazingly cool way to just meet people from all backgrounds, all ages, camping out with their airplane and watching the sights, watching the scenery. And for me, it is either a day of walking around, meeting new pilots. It's a day of walking around, meeting old friends, because some of them come from around the world to come to AirVenture every year. And that is the only time I get to see them. And I've made so many new friends every year by just going there for the week or going there for even a day or two. And that for me is the most amazing experience, is to make new friends, see old friends.
Yeah, I think my experience is very similar. At the risk of sounding like a commercial for the Oshkosh EAA AirVenture, I have to say that people fly in from across the country, maybe even across the world for this. For me, it's an hour and 15-minute drive. So I feel extremely privileged that, I typically go there 2 or 3 days in a week, so I don't stay there the whole time. It's short distance that I can do this. There are a few things that I enjoy more than anything else. Number one is the access to the people and the real pilots. Like you mentioned, you can walk and talk to the person who hand built an airplane or flew a World War II airplane. There are trams. If you can't walk, there are trams that they can transport you from place to place, because this place is vast. It is gigantic. It will take you a very long time to walk from one side of the other. So don't underestimate it. For sure, bring your best walking shoes. There are vendors. That's the other thing, is that there are big vendors like Boeing and big aircraft companies like Textron, but we also have small vendors. So it's a marketplace. You can go talk to them. And Elaine, let's talk a little bit about the workshops that they do, because I think that is another somewhat understated, but a very, very useful and very interesting part of the AirVenture.
That is something that I discovered some time ago, where you could go into these workshop buildings where they're just open air buildings with a roof, and you can do things like learn how to build a wooden wing rib. You can learn how to rivet. You can learn any number of things that will require those kinds of skills to build an airplane. And it's really fun because it's hands-on. Kids love it because they can build a part of an airplane wing, and they can learn a little bit about how that works. They can learn a lot about how airplanes work, which is just amazingly fun for them. And the fact that you can go in and watch do these hands-on, again, meet really interesting people while you're at it, is just a small part of this huge experience. But it's one of the really, really cool things, because you really can't do that anywhere else.
Yeah, and then if you're an aviation historian, you get to meet some of the airplanes that have flown in some historic events. Um, we also get to meet some celebrities and very famous aviators, whether they're historic aviators or modern day aviators. And most of the time, they're very accessible. You get to either listen to them in a seminar or even in a one-on-one and in a small group setting, which is fantastic. It's kind of hard to get access like that.
Yeah, the amazing speaker events, the amazing aircraft displays. You can go, and I've done this. You can go up inside some of these World War II bombers that have served in the war, and just you're literally touching history, and it is absolutely amazing. They have events where they have World War II veterans from other wars around the world who come and speak about the aircraft they flew, about their experiences. And you can actually meet some of the airshow performers. Some of them will have a meet and greet event. It's an amazing array of experiences you can have outside of the actual airshow.
Yeah, and then we talked a little bit about this before that if you have young kids, this kid venture, there's plenty of things to do with kids, both hands-on stuff, building model airplanes, or even learning about airplanes and learning about aviation, learning about careers. I think you mentioned that before, if anybody's interested in aviation, a career. And there are people that know what they're talking about, they're experts, they're teachers, and it is a great place to take young kids. In fact, I have a friend of mine who flies in with his young son from New York every year. I meet him every year there, and they're way busy. We literally have to set up, okay, 10 minutes, I'll meet you. And typically it's over, grabbing lunch, because that's about the only time they have. Otherwise, they're super busy.
Yes, it's one of those events that you really cannot see everything in one day. And that's the one thing I hear about people over and over who try to do it all in one day, and they just see a fraction of what's there. So it's good to plan ahead on what your interests are, what your family's interests are, because then you can make the most of the time that you are there to try to take in everything you can. Speaking of family friendly, strollers and carts are always welcome, and there are lots of families walking around, so it is definitely some place where you can figure out those little niches so that you can take a rest. The downside is that it's so crowded there sometimes you can lose people, so keep track of everybody, find the meeting places that are available to you in case you lose track, or if you need to meet somebody in an hour, because it is that crowded, especially when the weather's nice.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that place is big and there's so many people that you have to really plan. I mean, the runways are, I don't know, like a couple of miles long. So if you want to walk from the south end of the runway to the north end, it's going to take you
It's a lot
quite
of
a bit.
walking. You mentioned trams and buses. There's transportation available. Lots of places to sit. I like having the lawn chairs when you know you're going to be walking away, and then you want to sit down to either see the air show or find a place to take a break. So there's lots of options, and if you have all of that planned out, you'll have a really, really good time. This is the opposite of the kind of camping I usually do, and it is not for the faint of heart if you are worried about the weather. It is generally fabulous weather for the whole week, but you occasionally get some precipitation or storms moving in. So if you plan ahead, you'll do just fine.
Yeah, it's summer, it's July in Wisconsin. It's hot, humid, and it might storm. One other thing that we should mention, although I haven't personally gone to it, there is a seaplane base a little distant from the main airport area where there are planes that come and land in the lake, and there's a seaplane base, and there are lectures and tours around the seaplane base also.
Oh, yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. That is one place where you can have a quiet, shady picnic lunch. I think that's a real nice gem. You have a separate parking lot there and a shuttle that will take you from the main AirVenture grounds to the seaplane base. This is based on a little corner of Lake Winnebago, which, if you look on the map, is that large lake that is on the east side of Oshkosh. And it's all shaded. It's very quiet. Even though there are seaplanes based there, they will come and go just at intermittent times. So there's hardly any aircraft noise. And if you do want to see a demonstration or see an event, you can check the schedule. But that is a really neat place to go when you just want some peace and quiet. And you can hang out for as long as you want to.
I feel like we just did a nice commercial for the EAA. They should sponsor this episode, don't you think?
Oh, they definitely should. And they have a really, really well organized show. It's definitely marketed as something for everybody, and it is something that you will never stop. You'll never stop discovering things. I always see something I've never seen before every time I go.
100%. And then I see people I haven't seen in years also. We will make sure we put the links to this. And the EAA also has an app, like everybody else, that is really good for planning. It tells you where the events are. It tells you the distances. It tells you the meeting schedule, the workshop schedule, all those things. I usually have my cell phone on all those meetings or locations planned. So it's really, really helpful. So we'll make sure to put the links to the EAA AirVenture. Elaine, I know you and I are aviation geeks, so we get excited about it. But the whole point of today is to get other people. If you're not a pilot, if you're not into aviation, there's still plenty to do in the AirVenture, and I hope people will consider going to it at least once in your lifetime.
At least once, and I bet that most of you will want to go back, because I promise it will be a little different every year, and you will learn a little bit more about the things you can experience there. So it's a great event.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone every year, but I think the first I went was in late 90s, and now it's almost getting into late 2020, the second half of 2020s, and everything has changed. Technology, the kind of aircraft you see, certain things are same, certain things are different. Highly, highly recommended, whether you're into aviation or not. Hope you will give this a shot and try, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Monday through Sunday, starting July 21st. And the big arrival day, as we mentioned, is the day before. So the hidden secret is that you could go plane spotting in the Oshkosh area the weekend before AirVenture actually starts, and the sky will be full of airplanes.
So with 10,000 odd airplanes, 15,000 odd campsites, 700,000 people coming in, and the air show and the kid venture and the war section, everything. I hope we have provided a compelling thing for families to do this summer.
And if you just want to go glamping in a really, really cool spot with your family, this is definitely a place you should check out every July in Oshkosh. And we hope that you can tell us about your experiences. Have you ever been there? And we'd like to know what you think.
And please do comment about what you think. And we have other fantastic episodes lined up for you here in Aviation Intrigue. So do not forget to come back and visit us. And please, if you would, subscribe, like, and comment, and share this episode and our podcast with others.